beside him, the same as that officer. I have a due diligence as an elected official, so do you. You're conducting yourself in a very democratic way, and I love the process and the transparency, and I think your community appreciates these kind of meetings. I do as well. But there is some accountability to you as a community representative, to your constituents, to Prince Edward Island, to Canada, and lastly, by the people who helped you survive the harsh lands known as Canada back in the day. We did. So if you come to my community, we will feed you. We will teach you who we are. We will feed you and send you on your way in a good way. That's what it's all about. So when you drive by the Island First Nation, stop in and have a cup of coffee with me, and we'll continue this conversation. On Monday, I believe, we're having our Truth and Reconciliation Day. I'm not about conforming. I do things differently. On Monday, we're having a Truth and Reconciliation Day specifically for my community, provincial, in a province that we can communicate. I'm familiar with the history of this community. I fished off Wood Island and I posted that online. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. And I'm going to say names because that's who I am. I fished off Pictou Island, called the Southern Ground, and one of the first licenses that we had in Edward First Nation. I was a community peace officer. I was asked by my chief to go on the water, keep the peace for our people. I said, okay, they threw me the keys. I didn't know what it was like to be a captain. I had to learn myself. Set north to south, got in a lot of trouble. But the Murray Harbor and the Murray River boys challenged me on the water, and I fought with them on the water. 2 years ago, my son was playing junior B in Monaco. This big guy, burly guy, come flying over the, hey, Junior! And Jamie Stewart. And I was like, hey, but what happened was we fought on the water, we argued, and I explained to him why I'm here, who I am. And he said, hey, Junior, I play ball against you. I said, yeah. So we play ball against you. We have more in common than we do in our differences. If we focus on the hate and we focus on the mistruth, it's going to keep us divided. So when your community members fought with us on the water, and through time and education we got along, and we did get along, and we fished beside each other. We're fishing today in New Phrase, we're fishing in Surrey, anywhere that will allow us to come in. Do you know what they said back in the day? No effing Indians are allowed in our harbor. That's what they said to us. Well, we'll go where we're accepted and be a part of society, productive. We don't want anything. We don't want to be in your community having these lectures or speaking on behalf of the First Nation. We don't. We want to be friendly neighbors. We want you to come to our community. We want you to understand what it's like to be First Nation. We don't want you to judge us or stereotype us based on something you read on Facebook or misinformation. I can only speak to the truth of what I know. And this is the hardest part. I'm standing here today because my father survived school. How many of your kids have graduated? Raise your hand. Are you thankful that they're alive and didn't die in high school? That shouldn't go together. Those two things should never go together. Indian residential schools, and my dad and my uncle, my aunt, I survived. I didn't die. How many First Nation women have to be buried in a dump site before it's worthwhile? What's the threshold? How many dead Indians have to be buried under a school? 1? Or is it 215? Well, unless we find 215, it's not true. I don't know what the threshold is for us to be accepted as a productive part of society. I don't know what it is to be accepted in your council, to share an opinion online. If my father had died, I would not be here today. I would not have married my beautiful wife from Charlottetown, a non-Aboriginal. I would not be here today. My daughter Jessica Gould is an RN. She would not be here, and my grandchildren. My son Michael Gould is a Red Civil electrician. He would not be here today. My son Roddy works for the government. He would not be here today. My son Stephen is a fisherman and a snow crabber. He would not be here today. I will always fight for my grandchildren. And I will always tell them their great-grandfather's story because it is my story to share. My responsibility is to give my grandchildren the tools that Sir John A. Macdonald's practices took away from my father and my grandfather. I will not allow that to happen to my children's children. I won't. I will come to every town. I will come to every village, and I will speak on behalf of our community and our like to be First Nation in these days, in these times. This isn't 1,000 years ago. It isn't even 100 years ago. This is 2 years ago. Your sign was last week. Racism is alive and well in Prince Island. So I thank your member of your council for allowing me the opportunity to speak to the racism. I've done this many times, and I will continuously do it. And our First Nation people have to always speak to the truth when these things come up. So that's why I'm honored to be here. When we talked about the name Savage Harbor, why do I have to have a town hall discussion? Oh, we've had these discussions with churches, with groups. We invited them to our community. Come and listen what it's like. Hear our story. Then you tell me that it's okay to call you a savage. I articulate very well in your language. A savage could not do that. I'm very proud of my ability to speak, and my voice is the same thing that you have. You have a representation of your constituents. When you speak, there's a responsibility to that. You find people here who know that, and I applaud you for that. I know that. A lot of the First Nation people know that. So every time there's an opportunity to speak, we have to speak. The thing that bothers me the most about your sign is it is your community's representation. He is a member of this council. It was not the first statement, because everyone is entitled to their opinion. The first statement, when I heard that there were 215 potential bodies found, and they did say this, they did say it was a mass grave. The unmarked graves at that institution, when it was brought to our attention on a Friday afternoon, I was with my family in Charlottetown, and I told my wife, I have to speak to this, I have to keep this story going. It didn't matter that you guys were now aware of the stuff that I've known my entire life through my father, and our people have known how we've been treated for years. It was a matter of principle to keep the conversation going. It was a matter of principle at that time. I don't understand the science to how they're going to penetrate with radars or do whatever. I don't. But I do take offense with the statement that the governmental genocidal practices of this Canadian government, backed by an institution that Sir John A. Macdonald helped develop, the residential school system, is a hoax. I challenge you in your community, I challenge you in your council. Are you educated enough in the historical facts of this Canadian government to make such a stance and post a sign and enter a debate with me?